You already know this feeling. Someone says something that cuts right through you, and before you have finished processing it, you have already responded. Not the response you would have chosen if you had a second to think. The one that came out anyway. Maybe it was anger. Maybe it was silence when you needed to speak. Maybe it was saying yes when every part of you knew the answer was no. And then 5 minutes later or 5 years later, you were still carrying it. Still asking yourself why you responded that way. Still wondering if you could have handled it differently. You could have. There was a space between what happened and what you did about it. You just never learned it was there. A psychiatrist named Viktor Frankl spent his life mapping that space. What he found there changed everything we understand about why human beings suffer, why they survive, and what actually gives a life its weight. This is that map. Frankl built an entire branch of psychology around one sentence. Between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is your power to choose your response. In your response lies your growth and your freedom. Read it again slowly, because most people miss the weight of it the first time. Stimulus is anything that happens to you: a message, a loss, a betrayal, a diagnosis, a door that closes, a person who leaves. Response is what you do with it. The space in between is where your entire life is actually being decided. Not in the big moments you rehearse for, in the small ones you do not see coming. When your manager dismisses your idea in front of the room, that is a stimulus. The space is the half second between the dismissal and what you do next. When someone you trusted does not show up, that is a stimulus. The space is everything between that moment and the story you decide to build around it. Frankl called this the last of the human freedoms. Not freedom of movement, not freedom of circumstance. The freedom to choose your own response, and he was unambiguous about this. It cannot be taken from you. Not by circumstance, not by other people, not by anything outside you. It can only be abandoned, and most people abandon it without ever realizing it existed. Frankl called his framework logotherapy. Logo comes from the Greek word for meaning. His central argument was that the primary force driving human behavior is not pleasure, and it is not power. It is meaning. He called it the will to meaning, and he was specific about what meaning actually is. It is not happiness. You cannot chase happiness directly. Frankl had a name for what happens when you try. He called it hyperintention. The harder you aim at happiness, the faster it moves away from you. Think about the last time you tried to force yourself to sleep. The trying is exactly what kept you awake. Happiness works the same way. It is a byproduct, not a destination. It arrives when you are occupied with something that matters, not when you are hunting for it. Meaning, according to Frankl, can be found 3 ways: through what you create or give, your work, your actions, the things you build or contribute; through what you receive, love, beauty, a conversation that shifts something in you; and through the attitude you take towards suffering you cannot avoid. That third one is the one most people skip, because it demands something uncomfortable. It demands that you look at something painful and ask, what is this requiring of me? Not, why is this happening to me? Not, how do I make this stop? That is the question that opens the space. Frankl described a condition he observed in enormous numbers of people, and he gave it a name. He called it the existential vacuum. It is the inner emptiness that settles in when you have no clear answer to the question, what for? Not what happened, not what next, what for? You have felt this. It does not always arrive as sadness. Sometimes it looks like restlessness you cannot explain. Sometimes it looks like scrolling for an hour and feeling worse than before you started. Sometimes it looks like achieving exactly what you said you wanted, and then standing in the middle of it wondering why it does not feel the way you thought it would. Frankl had a name for that specific version too. He called it Sunday neurosis. The depression that surfaces when the noise of the week stops and the vacuum becomes impossible to ignore. Monday to Friday, you are occupied. The tasks, the deadlines, the meetings, they fill the space where the question should be. Sunday arrives, and the question is still there, unanswered, louder than before. The vacuum does not mean something is broken in you. It means something is missing. Specifically, a reason that is bigger than comfort, bigger than status, bigger than the next thing on the list. Without that, you will keep filling the space with whatever is available. And what is available is usually noise. There is a version of optimism that is useless. The kind that pretends difficulty does not exist. The kind that tells you to think positive while something real is falling apart. Frankl had no patience for it, and he developed an alternative. He called it tragic optimism. It is the capacity to say yes to life, even when 3 things are unavoidably true: pain, guilt, and death. He grouped these 3 together deliberately. Pain, because suffering is not optional. Guilt, because you will fail, you will fall short, you will look back at choices you wish you had made differently. Death, because everything ends. Tragic optimism is not pretending these are not real. It is choosing to find meaning in spite of them. Through them, here's what that looks like practically. You are in a situation you did not choose and cannot leave immediately. A job that is grinding you down, a relationship that has gone cold, a loss you are still absorbing. Fake optimism says, it is fine, stay positive, it could be worse. Tragic optimism says, this is hard, and it is real, and I am going to find what this moment is asking of me, and I am going to answer it. The difference is not tone. The difference is honesty. Frankl believed that facing suffering honestly, without flinching and without collapsing, was one of the highest things a human being could do. Not because suffering is good, because your response to it is yours, and it is one of the few things in a life that genuinely belongs to you. Frankl noticed a pattern that shows up in almost every area of human struggle. The harder you try to force a specific outcome, the further that outcome moves from you. He called the mechanism hyperintention. You want to make a good impression, so you think about making a good impression the entire time, which makes you stiff and self-conscious, and the impression suffers. You want to fall asleep, so you monitor whether you are falling asleep, which keeps you awake. You want to stop being anxious, so you watch yourself for signs of anxiety, which produces more anxiety. The attention itself is the problem. Frankl developed a clinical technique to break this loop. He called it paradoxical intention. Instead of trying to suppress the thing you fear, you lean into it deliberately. If you are afraid of embarrassing yourself in a presentation, you walk in telling yourself, today I am going to give the most embarrassingly bad presentation this room has ever witnessed. The fear loses its grip when you stop fighting it. The anxiety loop breaks when you remove the resistance. This is not a trick. It is a precise observation about how human attention works. What you resist persists. What you stop fighting often dissolves on its own. The companion technique is what Frankl called dereflection. Instead of turning your attention inward toward the problem, you redirect it outward toward meaning. Not, why am I struggling? But, what does the world need from me right now? The shift is small, the result is not. Of the 3 pathways to meaning Frankl identified, the one that applies regardless of your circumstances is attitudinal values. When you cannot change what is happening, you still choose how you meet it. That choice is not passive. It is one of the most active things a human being can do. You are in a conversation that is going badly. You can feel the other person pushing. Every instinct is pointing toward escalation. The attitudinal value is the decision you make in the space between their provocation and your response. Not, what is the cleverest thing I could say? Not, how do I win this? What response will I be able to respect when I look back at this moment? That question is not weakness. It is the application of a freedom that most people never claim. Frankl was direct about the cost of not claiming it. When you hand your response over to whoever or whatever triggered you, you are not being authentic. You are being reactive, and there is a difference. Authentic means chosen. Reactive means automatic. Your automatic responses were shaped by everything that has happened to you. Your chosen responses are shaped by who you have decided to be. Most people spend their entire lives running on automatic and calling it personality. Frankl called it an abdication of the one freedom that cannot be stripped away. Frankl identified a category of suffering that conventional psychology kept misdiagnosing. He called it noogenic neurosis. It is psychological distress that does not come from trauma, from biology, or from unresolved conflict. It comes from the absence of meaning. You are not broken. You are empty. And those 2 things require completely different responses. If you treat an emptiness like a wound, you will keep applying the wrong medicine. More therapy, more distraction, more optimization, more achievement, and none of it touches the actual problem. Because the problem is not inside your past. It is inside your future. Specifically, the future you cannot see a reason to move toward. Frankl wrote that a person who has a why can bear almost any how. Remove the why, and even a comfortable life becomes unbearable. You have probably seen this. Someone who has everything the world says should make a person happy, and they are miserable. The house, the money, the relationship, the title, and an emptiness underneath all of it that none of those things can reach. That is not ingratitude. That is a meaning deficit. And the only thing that fills a meaning deficit is meaning, not more of what you already have. Here is what Frankl's work actually demands of you. Not positivity, not resilience in the motivational sense of the word. Attention. Attention to the space between what hits you and what you do with it. Attention to whether you are chasing happiness or building meaning. Attention to whether your responses are chosen or just automatic. Attention to whether the emptiness you feel is a wound that needs healing or a vacuum that needs filling. These are not the same questions, and they do not have the same answers. The next time something happens to you, and something will, there will be a space. It will feel like no time at all. It is actually everything. In that space, you are not a product of what happened to you. You are a person making a choice about who you are going to be on the other side of it. Frankl called that the last human freedom. He meant it literally. You have it right now. The only question is whether you are going to use it.